that takes people in a church or a family away from the work of God. You see it. Listen, you trace back the history of dead churches, of broken families, and you'll see that one little eek where someone started veering off course. And now they are where they are. Are you with me? Do you agree with me? Absolutely. We have to be so vigilant. I mean, take the example of Peter in the Scriptures. Peter had this great experience with Christ, where Christ asked him, "Who do you say I am?" And Peter said, "You're the Christ, you're Jesus, of Nazareth, but you're the Messiah of God." And Jesus said, "Oh, Pete, this is so great. I'm going to use you. I'm going to build my church on you and all your followers. And I mean, it's just going to be this great thing." But 10 verses later, in that same text, Jesus says, "Okay, guys, break camp. We got to pack up and head down to Jerusalem because I'm going to have to die and then rise again in 3 days, and that's how all this, church thing's going to get going. It's going to be, it's going to be fine. Let's go." And Peter says, "Oh, no one said anything about you dying." In fact, they had a ton, but no, over my dead body, Jesus, if you're going to be, killed down there, forget it. And you remember what Jesus said to him? The same guy who had just said, "Hey, you're my rock. You're the guy I'm going to build my church on." He says to him, "Hey, Pete, get behind me, Satan." Whoa. Talk about a drop in the Dow. I mean, he went from being, sky high to being Satan himself. I haven't always wondered this, but recently I've been wondering this. I've always just, assumed that Jesus was actually calling Peter Satan. It was like calling him a name. You're acting like Satan right now, Peter, stop. But what about this? See, Jesus was the Son of God. He was all man, but he was all God. He can see the spiritual war waging around. I mean, everywhere he went, he was drawing demons out, and they were having these spiritual discussions. Is it possible that on that very day, at that specific moment, that Satan himself was in the room and whispering in the ear of Peter and saying, "Hey, Pete, man, you can't let him go to Jerusalem and die. That's not how this can work. You got to keep him alive. He's the teacher. He's the one that everybody's going to listen to. No one's going to listen to you. You're just a fisherman. Man, you got to fight against that. You can't let this guy die." And Peter's like, "Yeah, that's a good thing. Save Jesus' life. He's my teacher. He's my master. Of course I'd protect him." And so he interjects and he says, "Hey, Jesus, I got this great idea. We're not going to let you die." And Jesus is watching the deceiver speak in the ear of Peter, and he doesn't address Peter. He says, "Hey, deceiver, Satan, back of the line. You're not going to mess up the will of my Father. You're not going to draw us off sides. You're not going to whisper in the ear of one of my followers and get him to stop me from doing what I'm supposed to do so that the whole world can be saved." See, that's what can occur in all of our relationships, in our life groups, in our church in general, is that the work of the adversary can be done. It can be like, "Hey, you need to make a fuss about that. Hey, you need to put more focus on this and less on what the gospel is really about." And we can sacrifice the best thing, God's thing, for all these good things, and then we're off course. See what I'm saying? Yeah, there's evil in good places, and we need to be prayed up and ready for that evil so that we can face it when it comes. Write this down. When the lights turn on, some of this passage teaches us another thing about evil, is that when the lights turn on, Satan's true nature is exposed. I just love that interaction he has with the demon-possessed guy. The guy, demon-possessed guy shrieks in fear and then says, "Oh, you're the Christ, you're the Holy One." And Jesus says, "Be quiet," and takes control of the situation. I liken it to, like that moment in your home life where someone walks into the laundry room, turns on the light, and like King Kong cockroach is right there in the middle of the floor, right? And the thing's just kind of sitting there, and it's got the, antenna, and it's just kind of, and you see it, and somehow, I don't know if I think they got eyes, but they sense you're there, right? And so you got that, it's like, what's going to happen now? Right? And so you take one step. I usually try to take that one big step so I can smush them. But like my wife takes that one huge step back, right? But somebody moves, and when that movement happens, it's like cockroach nose, and it just takes off. It finds a shoe to crawl in, which is always gross. Isn't that gross? Or it finds like a dish or a washer or whatever, a dishwasher? Those in the laundry room? Anyway, it finds something to crawl under, and then it's just gone, right? And this is what happens. Listen to me. Look at me. Look at me. Come on, everybody look at me. This is what happens in spiritual warfare when the name and the power of Jesus Christ is invoked into the mix. The demons, the powers against us, have no power, and they scurry in fear from the authority of the Son of God in us. I mean, that's just what that's what they're programmed to do. That's all they're able to do. Run and hide. But here's what we do. This is why this is important to understand. It's because a lot of times we don't take advantage of that. In fact, I know tons of Christians who by faith have received Jesus Christ, but like another book I read once described, all they've ever done is invited them into the entryway of their home. Hey, Jesus, come into my life, but stay here. Because I don't want you to see all the other stuff in my life. In fact, I don't want you to influence the other pieces of my life. I'm going to take care of my relationships, my addictions, all these other things. They're back deeper into the house, but you got to stay here in the entryway. And to me, that makes about as much sense as ordering up some pest control and having them spray a 4x4 square in your home, hoping that the bugs will crawl over that piece. You'd be an idiot to do that. You got to get that guy to spray out all the corners to go where the bugs are so that the bugs can be exterminated from your home. It's the same thing in our relationships with Jesus Christ. We sit on a virtual powder keg of power in our relationships with Jesus Christ. But we choose again and again and again to not involve Jesus in the areas of our lives that need his power most. What is our deal? We settle for the vomit that dogs go back to over and over again and chew up and eat up. That's what the Bible calls it when we go back to our sin over and over again. We settle for eating vomit when we could be eaten at the banquet table of the King. And the only difference between the two is us allowing Jesus to move from the entry. I know how you are. If you haven't cleaned up your house, especially some of you ladies, someone comes over and they're like, hey, how you doing? I just thought I'd drop by. Oh, great. Stay here. Okay. No, don't look behind me. I've got a messy house. And some of us have this attitude when it comes to our faith in Jesus Christ. Hey, Jesus, great. Look at all the put together me. Look at the Sunday me. I serve in the children's ministry. Stay here in this space. Everybody just enjoy how great I look here. But Jesus wants to transform the back. He wants to get into your addictions and your broken relationships. And he wants his power over the forces of his adversary to take root there. Oh, let's let him into the rooms. Let's let him into the rooms. It says there as well that when the lights turn on, Satan's true nature is exposed. But also this, good versus evil is not a fair fight. It's not a fair fight. You know, we've kind of grown up in an age where we've watched like Star Wars 55 times, and we see, Darth Vader versus Luke Skywalker, and we see the yin and yang, that circle. That's like an Eastern version of good versus evil. It's actually this belief system called duality, that there's equal parts good and equal parts evil in the world, and we get to choose which one we're going to be. Okay. There is evil and good in the world, but can I share with you the ratios according to Scripture? And the power quotients, according to Scripture. In Scripture, it teaches us that Satan only has power because, God allows him to have it. In the Scriptures, it teaches us that there isn't a contest, that this isn't a fight of any kind at all. In the Scriptures, it basically tells us that God is like a full-grown man and that Satan's like a fire ant. Anybody ever stepped in a fire ant hill? How do they all know to bite at the same time? Does anybody know that? What's up with that? Yeah, they bite you, and isn't that like uncomfortable? And there's that burning sensation, and you're like, oh man! But does anybody ever move from your house when you get bit by a fire ant? That's it. We're selling this place. We've got fire ants. We got to get out of here. No, this isn't an equal fight. In fact, if you're like me, if I get bit by a fire ant, and I find the hill. Well, I got this neat little chemical in my garage called ortho.